Thank you very much. I'm going to tell a little story about working with Catch recently. With apologies to the Catch developers, it was just a convenient answer. It's a convenient example, it's no criticism. So I was helping with the Catch documentation and I wanted to make sure I understood a couple of new features. And that was great because there was user documentation for them, and happily the documentation had example code. So all I needed to do was take that code and compile it. But then I got compiler errors. And this was going to be like a 2-minute thing, and suddenly it wasn't a 2-minute thing. So what do? Well, I'm sure it sounds familiar to a lot of you, but it was quite easy to solve. All I had to do was search for the missing symbol in the documentation. It wasn't anywhere in the documentation. Okay, so I'll search for the example code from the documentation elsewhere in the project. I found it. So then I had to diff and find out what I was missing. And then all I had to do was paste in the relevant missing bit of code, and it worked. So I was happy, job done. Except then I had to spend time, or I chose to, but of course I was going to fix the documentation and submit a pull request, because why wouldn't you? Is there a better way to do this? I'm going to talk through how I used a tool called MDSnippets to make it really easy to pull code from your tests, or even occasionally your production code, into Markdown documentation so that your users, if you document in Markdown, never have to go through that small experience again. So the basic idea with Markdown snippets, MDSnippets, is that you put little placeholder comments in your source code. I'm sure the pattern is really obvious. You've got begin snippet and then a name, and then at the end of the chunk you want to include end snippet. You give your snippets a unique name, so here was the other chunk that I needed, and this was what was missing. This was all that was missing and what I needed to copy and paste in. And then where before your Markdown file would have been called something.md, you call it something.source.md. That's its convention. You don't have to do that, but you might as well stick to the convention. And then you see at the bottom, snippet, name of what you want to paste in. You can even include file names, actually, so you can include test output, for example, or example inputs, anything like that. And then you run the MDSnippets program, and it's, depending on the command line arguments you give, it searches through your source code, expands any snippets, and fails if it finds a missing snippet name. So now I have my .md file generated from the .source.md of the same name, and if I zoom in, it looks much the same as the original code, except it's machine generated, so it's always up to date. Another little nice feature is it puts a link at the bottom, and if you click on that link, it goes to the snippet source. So that means even if you don't include all the code that a user would need to be able to run it, they can just go to the source code, you can see it's highlighted, it picks the exact lines, and they can see what headers are needed and things like that. So it's a really, really lovely mechanism. So in summary, you have your source.md file, or files. You can, with snippet names in, your source files with begin snippet, end snippet. It's totally language agnostic, by the way. It's nothing specific to C++. You can use it any other text-based language. You can pull in other text files as well. You run that through MDSnippets, and you get these beautifully formatted, easily accessible source and context. So that's it, MDSnippets.com, guaranteed working code examples, and huge thanks to Simon Kropp in Australia for being incredibly responsive and making this excellent tool available. Can I encourage you, if you're responsible for any open source documentation, to have a look at it? And if anyone wants help adding it to their system, I'm really happy to do that and show how we've done it in approval tests. Thank you very much.